Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to another live video in my Facebook group, the Portrait Photographers Resource. We have some very special guests today. We really always have special guests, but this particular couple, this amazing group of photographers, if you want to call them, maybe a duo would be a better way to describe them. They really have just the most unique approach and way of looking at the world, and they've built an absolutely incredible brand through their unique and vibrant storytelling and just this really special way at looking at the world. I want to introduce you all to the one, the only Mann. Erica and Lanny, say hello to the world.
Hello, world.
Hello out there.
Hey, I am so... Yeah, no, I am so incredibly excited to have you guys on board. You know, it's honestly kind of a very humbling experience that you would give your time to hang out with us this afternoon. And I really appreciate you being flexible, working with us. We usually do these in the evenings, but, I know that's a little bit more challenging for you guys. I'm sure, being parents and all that. So it really means a lot that you guys would be a little flexible to join us in this education.
Yeah. Oh, of course. As soon as you had us critiques, we love it.
Yeah, no, this is going to be a lot of fun. This is something, I've been doing for about the past 2.5 years now. It's a way just to, for me to help connect the community and really help everyone grow as photographers. It's a passion project of mine. So I really appreciate you guys supporting that. And before we, jump into these live image critiques, many people know you as Fearless Award winners, and not just, Fearless Award winners, but I would say, I think it's safe to say the Fearless Award winners. How many times have you two, been in the top 5 in the world? I feel like it's almost pretty much every year, right?
I honestly don't know. We took a hiatus from all contests for a few
You
years.
did?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we started submitting to Fearless again last year, just for giggles. But yeah, no, I couldn't tell you.
No, it's all good. It's all good. And I'd like to actually hear your, maybe a little bit of insight on the reasoning behind that in a minute. But before we jump into that, for the very few people who don't know who Mann is, can you two just give a little bit of insight or maybe share a little bit of a story on who you two are, just to paint a picture for the world?
Yeah, sure. So we're Lanny and Erica, and our last name's Mann, hence where Mann comes from. We are complete accidental wedding photographers. And I would say being wedding photographers is something we've had to reckon with. Like, we're like, oh my God, we're wedding photographers. What do we do now? And that sort of... we really leaned into that aspect of really not knowing what we were doing as wedding photographers and not really liking weddings that much and not really liking quote unquote wedding photography that much. And that's sort of what led to our style, right? Which is documenting the wedding, but from a less traditional perspective.
Being more interested in everything outside of the predictable timeline of a wedding, the conventional ideas of what weddings and wedding photography is. Mm-hmm. So we kind of leaned into that. And the other thing we were both of us always drawn to is like, okay, whatever we're doing, let's try to do it to the highest level that we can imagine. And so we never sought out to become wedding photographers, but once we realized, I guess we're wedding photographers, let's try to take it to the highest level we can. So yeah,
absolutely. That's an amazing story. And one thing I'd like you to touch on a little bit is you two are absolutely, besides being incredible photographers, you're also quite accomplished and quite well-known educators, and you have an online education platform called Mann U. Would you mind sharing a little bit about what that is about?
Sure. Yeah, sure. Well, our friend Tyler Workin puts it best, which is that, everybody gets into wedding photography because they're excited about photography and they're excited about making money, and it's a new industry, but everybody hits, including ourselves, hits this expiry date. And it's like 2 to 3 years for wedding photographers. They hit this expiry date. They think they've lost their passion and they're no longer interested in
or burnt out.
Or they're burnt out. But about most people, it's like, I've lost my passion. What do I do now? How do I get my spark back? How do I get my creative energy back? And most people are looking for that in all the wrong places. They're looking for it in the photos, in the end result of the photos, and in how they operate their cameras. And so our education really centers around how to see and experience the world in a way that not just enhances your photography, but enhances the way you see and experience the world. And so that's sort of why we have this education, is for much bigger reasons than wedding photography. It's really about living up to your creative potential with or without a camera in your hand.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I love to hear that. And speaking, expanding on that a little bit, I know most people know you as being kind of the wedding photography gurus, but I know there are a lot of just portrait photographers and, photojournalists in general who don't even shoot weddings, but still take a lot of inspiration from your use of lighting and, creativity. So even if you are not a wedding photographer, I would highly encourage you to check out Erica and Lanny's education platform, Two Man U, because you're going to learn something incredible from it. It's a really unique platform, and everyone can take something away from it. And one thing I want to ask you too, I like to ask this question to a lot of the people that I look up to in the industry, and it's always interesting to kind of see, the variety of answers I get. And that is, what color underwear are you wearing? I'm just kidding. That's not what I was going to ask. No, my question though is, you have such a unique way of looking at the world, right? And that stems from just from your natural ability to be creative. But I feel like, sometimes as creatives, we're pressured so much to try to just really focus in on that creativity and push ourselves to new limits. So my question specifically is, is there somewhere that you pull inspiration from to help boost that creativity? Is it something that just comes natural, that you're born with? Can it be learned? Where's the best way for me to start thinking on that higher level of creativity?
I think that's a big question. Like, I feel like I could write a book on that, but
well, you are.
But I think the first thing is to stop labeling it creativity with a capital C, because that automatically for me puts a barrier up, because the most creative beings out there are kids, and what kids are really good at doing is things they're interested in. That's what they're interested in doing. And the older we get, the more things get piled on top of what we're actually interested in. And when I say interested, I mean what piques our curiosity when we're observing, right? Like, I remember watching Madeline and Timmy growing up. They could spend 30 seconds completely enthralled with a reflected piece of light on the wall. And that's creativity. They're not actually creating anything. They're not turning it into a photo, but the first step of creativity in my mind is just observing. And you don't need anything extraordinary to observe. You just need everyday life. And so I feel like creativity is in every single one of us, and it's an unlearning that has to take place as opposed to learning. It's getting back to who you are in your at your core being when you were a kid, and tapping back into that as opposed to learning some new lighting technique. Because whenever I'm doing contests or anything like that, the images that really pique my interest are when I'm looking at a photo of something someone noticed that I haven't noticed before. It's never about something they've done with their camera. It's, what did that person notice that I haven't noticed before? So
I'd say it's more about like turning down the volume on all the noise, like more than actually, finding inspiration in something. It's about, I'd say we've spent our whole career learning how to listen to and observe our own curiosity. And it's harder and harder today with social media and all the noise, right? To actually hear that signal. But and that has been a big shift in our photography, in our wedding photography, moving from the mindset of having to be creative and create something to, oh, I just have to see it's there, right? If I can quiet down the noise enough to see it and observe it and actually pay attention to where my curiosity draws me, that's been a big shift for us.
Yeah. And I just add on to what you said, like when people think of inspiration, they'll think of like fireworks, right? Like something that grabs my attention. It's
epiphanies.
The creativity and the inspiration are more like tiny, inaudible whispers. Like they are so quiet. It's not fireworks. It's not going to feel like fireworks. You're not going to be like, yes, I got it. Like, or it's a very different process than what we're trained to think it is, I think.
Mm-hmm. Love that perspective. Yeah, that's very insightful. And I know you talked about that a little bit in your recent online boot camp. I did catch that portion, and I found that to be so intriguing. So thank you for I'm sure we could talk, for hours. About all of this.
That's a big question.
Yeah, it is a big question, and it is hard sometimes to answer that in 2 minutes even, but I really appreciate you breaking it down into that little snippet. So thank you so much for doing that. And for those of you who are new to these live image critiques, basically what's going to be happening is Erica, Lanny, and myself are going to be going through 18 images that members in my Facebook group, the Portrait Photographers Resource, have submitted. This is something we do every single month. We have a variety of guest hosts that have joined us. We've had some incredible artists, including Jared Guionis, Ben Connolly, Amber Henry Spencer, Sean Black, Hiram Trio. I can keep going, but to have you guys with us is really, truly special. I am so excited to dive into this. And at the end, we are going to be giving away one free canvas print to a randomly selected photographer from ProPrints. So make sure you guys stick around till the end so you can claim the prize if you are in fact the winner. So without further ado, I am going to be looking at the comments to my right screen right here. So if you want to weigh in, you have any questions, you want to give your feedback, if you have any questions about, hair care tips from me, I'll be reading these and I'll be going back and answering them as best as we can. So let me just go ahead and pull
or hair
up.
care tips from Lanny.
Yeah.
You have some hair care tips for Lanny.
Yes, Lanny. Well, he has pretty amazing hair. I mean, I'm 10 out of 10 jealous, not going to lie.
Use some serum or something.
Anyway.
Well, anyway is right. So give me a second here. I usually have 3 monitors, but I'm down a monitor today because last week I was competing in the ProPrints Invitational live competition, and I thought I was going to be sneaky by bringing in my own color corrected monitor to edit and have, that little advantage on editing. And of course, as I'm bringing the monitor in, I hit a wall and broke the monitor. Yeah. So that's just karma, I guess. But so we're working on 2 monitors, so it's going to be a little bit slow, but let's go ahead and let me actually just pull this up right here. Give me 1 second, everyone. Wow, this is way easier with 3 monitors. Okay, here we go. We got the image pulled up. We're going to go ahead and switch my monitor here. Let's see. Perfect. So we should all be able to see the first image. There we go. All right, so here we go. This is the first image. This comes from photographer Leah, and this was a boudoir silhouette in a wildflower field shot during golden hour using a Canon RP. And Erica, Lanny, I'm going to let you guys kick off our image critiques and give us your thoughts.
Actually, I'll just go to the...
We can't see the
That's okay. I can just go to the Google.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, you can go to the...
I don't need to see it.
But as long as everybody else can, though, right?
Everyone else can, but you can also pull up the live on another screen if you have it, or it's also, you can go back to that Google Drive, and they are in order if you want to follow along.
This is the silhouette.
Yeah. So, first thing, I love the dreamy feel of this, and silhouettes I feel are really hard. They're easy to pull off technically, but they're difficult to pull off well because you're relying entirely on body language to get the feeling across in the photo. And I feel like the body language in this does translate. Like it's the what do you call that? Kink of the hip? the hip being out and the arms being up. And often when we're critiquing images, what we'll be talking about is the problems we'd be trying to solve. Okay, so I think this is a great image, but there's a few, if I were photographing this, there would be 2 or 3 problems I'd be trying to solve in this. Okay, so the first problem is I want as much negative space in between those hands as possible. Right? So the fingers on the hand that's up above and the fingers that are on the side, like I feel like because this is a portrait, you're going to have control over that, and you can get some negative space, some white sky in between those fingertips.
Those fingertips would just slightly separate from the wrist.
Yeah, and then the other problem I'd be trying to solve is the profile of the face.
Right.
Bringing the arms down a little bit further, perhaps, and
tucking the hair
back. Just being able to get a little bit more of the silhouetted head. I think the legs and the torso are really nicely silhouetted. The photographer's done a really good job at finding the brightest spot to put the silhouette on. But those are the problems I'd be trying to solve.
One little editing thing that my eye notices is on the, I guess you can't see my mouse, so I'll just describe it. So to the subject's right. Oh, wait,
well, no, just looking at the image.
We lost. Oh, there you're back. We lost your audio for a second. We're good.
Okay, to the left of the subject, I'm circling with my mouse, but
they can't see it. No.
There's this area that's higher contrast than everything else. It's sort of an elliptical shaped area in the flowers left of her leg. Yeah,
I'm
so I don't know if
right now
cloned or just something that could be cleaned up in post a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great critique, you two. I honestly, I really don't have much more to add to that. I was gonna say, mirror exactly what you said initially. You know, when you're doing silhouettes, you need to be a little bit more conscious on your body language because you don't have facial expressions to tell the story, right? So, I would, kind of more of an artistic choice, potentially opening up the legs a little bit to create that separation is going to avoid that kind of monopod look, bringing that chin up so we get more definition so it just doesn't look like a growth coming out of the torso, is just going to help really create that separation and create more of that negative space, as you said, Erica. So thank you so much, Leah. Really appreciate you submitting this. It was definitely a really good image to kind of kick this off. Yeah. So, okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to our next photo. This next photo, who does this come from? This comes from John Plank. I hope I'm saying that right. And this was captured at Rock City Park in New York, captured with a Nikon Z8. And a little bit of post-production techniques here, some dodge and burning. So, let's see. John, what a really cool location. This is definitely a place I would personally love to visit. Lanny, what are your thoughts? What kind of speaks to you when you look at this?
Well, the location, and so now I'm thinking as a photographer, where and how to feature my subject within this environment to kind of showcase it. It's obviously not showcasing the subject, so it's an environmental shot. I like the photographer's choice to place the subject kind of on that dark area, the dark part of the rocks behind, so they really pop. I guess I think that's just natural light. You see the shadow in front of him, so there's obviously light coming through the tunnel behind him. But for whatever reason, he's in the light. He's highlighted against the shadows behind them. So highlights on shadows there. Good job of finding a spot where they pop within the environment. If I just put myself here in the photographer's shoes and I'm thinking, okay, what can I change? What can I do differently to make a more impactful photograph? I'm probably going to be trying to figure out how to simplify the scene down to fewer elements. So right now the photographers included the sky, the rocks on the left and the right, and the tunnel behind the subject and the ground. So it's a lot. So the viewer's eye and the leaves, right? Partial leaves of the trees. So the viewer eye has a lot to take in and kind of try to bounce all around the place. I think we could arrive at a stronger composition by simplifying it down to fewer elements.
Okay.
So I start asking myself, well, which elements are adding and which elements are subtracting, or which elements do I find interesting that I want to feature, and which ones do I find less interesting? For me, I find the ground that he's standing on the least interesting, whereas I like the rocks, the tunnel, maybe the sky, maybe some of that foliage. So I'm probably going to be trying to figure out a way to probably get my camera lower and tilt the camera up, maybe to exclude the ground they're standing on. And then the other thing I'm probably going to try to do is because the subject is like not bullseye dead center, but within the center part of the image, right? Equal landscape on the left, equal landscape on the right. I'm probably going to decide if I prefer what's on the left or what's on the right, and feature more of that. So sort of bring them into the left or the right side of the composition. I'll probably turn my camera landscape oriented, to be honest.
Sure.
Because
the sky doesn't.
I'm drawn to yeah.
And I think just if the photographer had asked themselves a few questions, they might have landed at a slightly different composition and maybe a different pose with the guy as well. Because I don't mind the pose.
It's a little stiff, wouldn't you say?
It's stiff, but it feels like perhaps the photographer is trying to make the subject of the man look really small and the rocks look bigger. Okay, so if they have asked themselves, what is the point I'm trying to get across here? And if that was the point, how could I change my composition to make that work? And like Lanny said, get low, eliminate the ground. Maybe then it would make sense for him to be standing up and looking up at awe at these big rocks. He's so small right now that you can't tell that's what he's doing. But if I look really closely, that's maybe what I think he's doing. When he's this size in the frame, it goes back to that body language we talked about in the silhouette. His body language is and it does feel stiff. So if you do want to take the picture from this perspective, perhaps it would make more sense for him to be hiking through the scene since he's on a hiking trail. But if you are trying to get across the grandness of this landscape and this tiny person, then I think the composition would, you'd work your way into a different composition.
Yeah. Right on. Yeah. I mean, that's absolutely agree with both of your points. Really, the only thing I would have to add to that again is just talking a little bit more about that pose, maybe trying to have his pose reflect the way he's interacting with the environment a little bit more efficiently. Because, arms are just kind of down at the side, and he just feels a little guarded. He feels a little stiff, little closed in. So maybe, just as a recommendation to the photographer, maybe have him bring his hands up like he's looking, he's looking up, or, his hands are even on his waist, just like almost with this cloud of relief, like, wow, like, look where I am, or whatever the case may be. So that would be the only thing I would have to add, but your guys' points were absolutely spot on. So I want to say, John, thank you so much for submitting this photo. It was a really cool location and a cool thing to talk about. So
I'll just add another strategy, like for me personally, is I probably have the subject walking through, because I find it really hard personally to find a static pose that looks and feels organic and natural.
Yes.
And so I'll often just choose to have them walk back and forth through there, look up as you're walking through, and that generally results in a frame that looks more natural, organic, and less static and posed.
Right on. Well, awesome, guys. Thanks for the feedback. We're going to go ahead and move on now. This next photo comes from a regular contributor. This is from John Hawking. This was captured against a white paper backdrop using a 34-inch softbox with 2 strobes on the background, camera right and camera left, all mounted to cheetah stands. So, okay, it looks like, so 1 softbox, camera left on the subject, and then 2 lights on the background. I got you. Okay. So a little different than what you guys typically would photograph. I mean, I don't see you photographing too many babies in the studio, but unless there's another side of the 2-man world that I'm not aware of. But yeah, there's a couple things that stick out to me right away, but I would love for, since Lana, you started last time, Erica, I would love for you to start and point out if there's anything that you see right off the bat.
There's nothing that I like. Again, I'm going to go a little bit more esoteric here and not point out very specific things. But if listen, the parents are going to love this photo because parents love all photos of their kids. But if you want a photo of this nature to speak to strangers and attract the attention of strangers, right, and get people to hire you, then you need to make sure your audience, the strangers, fall in love with this little girl, right? And there's nothing in this picture that really shows me her personality, right? And we often talk about, the three core elements of a photo being light, composition, and then the last one is moment. So you've nailed the light, you've got the composition figured out. Now you just got to shoot the shit out of it and wait for that moment, right? Like wait for a moment that's unexpected, right? Like we have control over our light. We have control over our composition. The moment's the one thing we don't have control of, and we don't really want control of it, because when I'm taking a photo like this, what I really want to happen is something completely unexpected that I could not direct myself. Because something completely, if I'm surprised by something, then I'm going to be interested by it, and other people are going to be interested by it. So You've set yourself up here.
And it's easy to forget when making portraits that moment is still super important.
Yeah.
Right. It's not, it's not the same as documentary shooting when we're waiting for, an unscripted moment in the story to happen. The light's all controlled, the composition set, they're even posed and positioned, but we're still waiting for some sort of a moment, something that shows.
And obviously I can't say what that moment is or should be, but like, I'll just give a few examples. What if someone threw the balloon into the frame and she's looking up it and trying to reach at it? What if the balloon pops and it scares her and she bursts into tears? But like there's here she just looks like she's looking at someone that's trying to get her attention.
She's been propped up. Yeah. And she happens to be looking to the camera here.
So that's what I'd say about this photo. You got the light,
special. You
got the composition. Now we just need something unexpected.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think
you're gonna love this photo.
Yeah, no, that's an absolutely great point. The only thing I would add would be more on the technical side, John. So I would recommend that you maybe in post-production, you clean up a little bit of the lettering on the one. So if you're looking a little bit closely, you see some awkward, looks like maybe some smudge marks, or where the reflective light on the letters is catching the light weird, so it's showing some imperfections. And then obviously on the E, you kind of have the completely different color because it's reflecting just the light a little bit differently than the O and the N. So maybe consider blending that to make it more uniform. That's kind of more artistic choice. And then also on the girls, I'm assuming this is girl, on her right side, so left side of her face, if we're looking at it from our perspective, we're having just a little bit of a blowout or the light from the background spilling onto her. So that separation is a little bit muddled. So in the future, John, what you can do is just bring her forward a little bit more off your background so you can help avoid that. It's very challenging shooting against a white background with lighting like this. So overall, you did a phenomenal job, but just a couple small things to keep in mind in the future next time you're shooting against a white backdrop. So great points about the moment from you two. I think that's a very good point, John. Hopefully you keep that in mind for future sessions. So we'll go ahead and move on. This next one comes from Gretchen Troop, and yeah, Gretchen's watching live, so she'll be here to listen to you guys. And there's a quick story behind this, or I guess let me just read what she wrote. So this was a groomsman that came running over to me in the middle of me doing shutter drag and did this. His pants had just torn. Did it come across? Is there anything I could do to make the image stronger? I have a non-shutter drag shot too, but all the groomsmen are pointing to his crotch, and I think it's a little less natural. So that's what
Yeah.
Gretchen had to say about this photo.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah. Go ahead, Sean.
Well, no, I was gonna say I want you guys to weigh in for sure. Personally, to kind of just right off the bat, I almost would like to see the image, because you have it's part of the story, right, where you have people interacting and maybe bringing more attention to the ripped pants area, so it's just part of that humor and part of that moment. But so I would love to see that option. I almost would prefer that option, but obviously I haven't seen it, so I can't tell you which one is better in my opinion. But that's just initially, that's my thought in response to what you said, Gretchen. But Erica, Laney, what are your thoughts on the image that's in front of us?
Well, I mean, one of the questions was, does it read? Does it come through? And honestly, for me, it was a slow read. I noticed his expression and the shutter drag first, and then I noticed what was going on in the bottom part of the frame. And that's the point where I was thinking probably what they were thinking was, oh man, I wish I wasn't dragging my shutter now, because it probably would have been a faster read then.
I would say the shutter drag is not what's making it a slow read. What's making it a slow read is that is the composition, his face and his chest, and close to the camera. So basically, Gretchen, like, take that lens that you have and like make the crotch the subject of the photo. Yeah. So in this photo, the subject is the groom's face, and then the secondary is his crotch, right? Like, it's included in the frame, but it's kind of just included because it was there. So now your next frame is like, oh, okay, I'm gonna get close, I'm gonna get low, I'm gonna fill the frame with the crotch, and then his face is gonna be in the background, and that's gonna read much. 100%. And he's drunk. You can get close with the wide lens at this point, right? Like we always say the drunker they get, the wider our lenses get, right? Yeah. So just get like 6 inches from his crotch and just commit to telling that story.
But even as is, I think you can maybe crop down from the top a little bit more. I wish there was a little bit more breathing space on the bottom edge, to be honest. So just compositionally make it more about the crotch, less about his facial expression. And then just a little editing note on skin tones is his skin's on my screen's looking quite blue. So I think you could probably warm up the skin quite a bit.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, no, I think that's exactly what this photo needs, is bringing a little bit more attention to the area. And actually, Gretchen just texted me a photo, and I could probably pull it up for everyone. She did send me an image of the other version, and honestly, Gretchen, I'm really digging this other version a little bit more. I'm gonna pull it up on the lives if everyone can see it. Oops, here we go. So if you guys are watching the live, you'll be able to see it as well. But basically, here is the other version, and I think personally, I think it's a stronger moment for sure. This other photo,
way better.
Yeah.
But even still, lower, closer, more about the crotch, those hands pointing in, and less about the faces looking straight at the camera.
Yeah, that's great.
And I love that black and white toning. It's really strong.
Yeah, that much better. Yeah, just next time, really get on in there, Gretchen, really get on in that crotch. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you. That was a really cool photo to talk about. What a fun moment. Definitely, in my opinion, that black and white one is the stronger of the two, and absolutely a portfolio worthy image, Gretchen. So
totally.
Yeah, for sure.
I saw
All right.
Becky had a question there. We can answer
that is a good question. Yeah, let me actually, thank you. So Becky was asking, do you guys, two-man, ever do retakes of moments like this if you feel like you didn't get it the first time? Or do you just shrug and look for the next best moment? That's a great question, Becky.
It's a great question. I'm guessing we're talking about the crotch dance floor thing?
She's probably saying in general, like a moment like this.
So in general, no. Our approach very much is like 100% unscripted reality. Other than portraits, of course. Portraits is a totally different game. We're posing and directing everything, of course, and we're redoing it over and over. But outside of portraits, for us, our approach is to just let reality play out. And it is what it is. and do the best job we can at reacting to that. And there are a multitude of reasons for that, but one of the biggest ones for me is that it puts 100% of my like mental bandwidth and attention on observing and reacting to what's actually happening, and none of my brain is preoccupied with thinking about what should happen, what do I want to happen, what should I ask them to do. It's like it's easier to just go 100% all in on.
It allows us to stay in the moment, which is exactly what we want. We want to be fully in the moment, observing what's happening, not,
and as soon as
I missed that moment, I'm gonna recreate it. And our recreation of it is never going to be as good as what it was.
In fact, what happens next is probably going to be more interesting than anything we could try to have recreated. So that's our approach.
Mm-hmm. Really interesting perspective and great question, Becky. Keep questions like that coming. That was awesome.
Yeah, I'll just add another big reason for that approach for us is it sets a precedent. Like particularly early in the day, we go out of our way to not direct anything, and they know this, before they even hire us. Because as soon as we do suggest something or ask for something, then they're looking to us for direction all day long. We get grip and grins all day long. So it's almost like we're setting a precedent that they just forget about us. It's kind of our way of becoming visible so they don't think about us.
Well, and it really boils down to our mindset, right? So if we go into a wedding thinking the only interesting things are the things that we can set up, then that's what we're going to be in. That's going to be the reality. Whereas if we go into a wedding saying reality is much more interesting than anything I can set up, and we go in with that mindset,
wow,
it's like you see what you believe. You don't believe what you see. Did I get that the right way? No, you see. No, you believe. You no. What?
What are you trying to say?
I don't know. I'm just like, if you
believe it, you will see it. If you believe that magic's going to happen,
yes,
magic will
happen.
Exactly.
So if you believe that reality is much more interesting than anything you can set up, you're going to see the wedding through those eyes. Whereas if you believe you're only going to be able to get stuff that you set up, then that's going to be true as well.
Wow. Really amazing perspective on that. I love it. So that was a great question for discussion. Becky, thank you for asking that. We still got a few more images to get through. So, and by a few, I mean like 10. So we got to get through these. But let's go ahead and move on. So this next photo comes from another regular contributor. This comes from Radon Burton. And I believe, I'm actually 99.9% sure that this was captured at Schwabacher Landing in Grand Tetons National Park. And I'm going to let you guys start with this because I have something in my eye and I need to go rinse it out real quick. So give me 1 second. I can still hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no worries.
Do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start. Sure. So, first of all, great lighting, great location. And I would say this is a really good first image. But I'm going to go back to those problems that we'd be trying to solve. So in this photo, what I really think you need to ask yourself is, what am I trying to feature? Okay. Am I trying to feature the girl or am I trying to feature the landscape? Okay. And answering that question is going to help you come to a composition that's a little bit more interesting. So in here, I feel like you're trying to do both, but at the expense of
both.
Of both, at the expense of both, right? So you're not super featuring the landscape, you're not super featuring the person, you're trying to do both at the same time, and so neither are featured really well. She's kind of medium in the frame. So if your idea is to feature the landscape, okay, landscape comes first. I'm gonna, figure out my landscape composition first, and then I'm going to figure out where I can put her in it that makes the most sense. And I'm going to put her in the landscape in a pose that makes sense, right? So for example, here she's just standing in the water. Like how much more interesting, especially because she's dressed and barefoot, like how much more interesting would it be for her to be like wading across the water, tiptoeing, and you're getting that moment sort of right before her toe hits the water, right? So that would be putting landscape first and then putting the person in that landscape in a way that makes sense.
Because in this context, standing there the way she is, we know the only reason she would be where she is right now, doing what she's doing, is to have her photograph taken, right? Mm-hmm. Posing, looking at the camera. So something that suggests, oh, she might just be there, right? Or she's actually doing something that makes sense in this moment, in this scene.
Yeah.
Having her tie her in a way to the environment that makes sense is basically what you're trying to say.
Yeah. And that comes from the decision of landscape first, person second. Right. And then the reverse of that is person first, landscape second. Right. And this is trying to do both at the same time at the expense of both.
And then it's neither here nor there. It's hard to do medium well in an outdoor environmental portrait scenario.
What do you mean medium?
Medium size. Like the subject is medium distance, medium size within the frame versus they're small and tiny within the big scene, right, or big and up close. It's easier to make an impactful photograph either or, but in that medium, that happy medium, neither here nor there, it's difficult really to make a compelling, a really compelling frame. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at sky, mountains, trees, lake, water, reflection, subject. It's too many things. Simplify it down to 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one of the things we're often saying to ourselves, and even though we break this rule sometimes, is sky or ground. Like it's rarely do we put the sky and the ground in the photo.
Pick one or the other. Yeah.
And like we break that rule all the time, and there's times to do both, but it's often leads you to a better composition if you at least ask yourself that question.
Right. And one way the way I personally would approach something like this, and again, my way is not the right way, but one thing that you can do to accomplish exactly that is if you capture this with a little bit more compression, so capturing this maybe with some more telephoto, because you can really isolate, either the ground or, the subject in the frame. And speaking from experience, I know exactly where this was captured, and there isn't really a lot of space behind you to capture it with a telephoto, so you almost are forced to do it with a wider perspective. So in that case, that's where you have to really start doing some creative problem solving, where you're thinking, okay, well, I need to increase the distance between me and my subject so I can get that compression. So do I have the subject move further out towards the mountains? Do I just move as far back as I can? So a lot of different problem solving that you're having to accomplish here. But as the photo, just taking this photo at face value, Radon, if I can make maybe one suggestion, I think you could accomplish changing the composition of the photo a lot just by some simple cropping. You have a lot of negative space up top. You have some negative space at the bottom, so you could get rid of some of that foreground, or you can get rid of some of that background, and I think you would be able to make a little bit of a stronger image by getting rid of some of that negative space and going from there.
Can I just respond to your comment, Radon? Because you said, I love the toe dip idea. I tried to have her kick the water, but it ended up being super awkward. And yeah, that's the tough reality for us a lot of the time, is it does end up being awkward. At least, like, I warn our clients, I'm like, the first 5 minutes of the shoot, it's going to be awkward for you. It's going to be awkward for us. But especially with seniors, they're still kids. They're just big kids. Like, just have her run across that water. Okay, I want you to run, and instead of posing, okay, stand there and dip your foot in the water. Yeah. How about I want you to frolic across the water as if you're dancing to a Disney film movie or something like that.
Spin around 3 times, or give them an action to do and shoot right through it, including when they think you're not.
And if you're worried about it turning out or not, just don't worry about that. Just say, we're going to try something here, and it might really suck, but we're going to have fun doing it regardless. And bringing down your anxiety level will bring down their anxiety level. And that's what I notice, is when my client is awkward, it means it usually means I'm
nervous.
It usually means I'm awkward and being nervous. They're kind of shattering what I'm doing. So yeah.
Yeah, and when you're working with seniors, you got to try to connect with them on their level too. So when I'm doing a senior session, I'll be like, "Yo, what up, fam? No cap. This is some serious riz, yo. Dope nasty." and then that immediately gets them on a comfortable level. I'm just kidding. I don't say.
Yeah, and you
that,
see, if
but...
I did that, super awkward, and they'd be like, "What the fuck is with this girl?"
Be yourself.
Sean
can pull that off. Yeah.
Yeah, not to brag, but I am pretty cool, you know.
Yeah,
so.
You're like Phil Dunphy. You're basically like Phil Dunphy.
Exactly. I don't know who that is, but yes,
the dad from Modern Family.
Oh, yep. That's great. Yeah, that's a great show. All right, well, hey, Radon, as much as I would love to keep talking about this, we got to move on, so thank you so much. We're gonna go ahead and move on though to this next photo. Who does this next photo come from actually? This comes from Mark Creary. Yeah, Mark captured this with a Nikon Z8. He used one off-camera flash on each side, I'm assuming because he was trying to combat some awkward shadows or some strong highlights. Basically, he's just looking for any improvements and strengths, weaknesses as a photojournalism competition image.
Well, honestly, I'd say the light is great, Mark, and the moment is great. The only room for adjustment and potential improvement, I would say, is composition, and it's good. But could there be some sort of micro adjustments that could have been made to improve the composition? I'd say possibly. So one thing that I might notice, well, I certainly notice while editing, but I might notice while shooting if I'm paying attention to my edges, is just the bottom tip of her elbow. I'd love to have it all there. And so I would say either bend down or tilt the camera down slightly. And then just symmetrically wise, I would probably be inclined to move right slightly to just get a little bit of space. You see how you've got some breathing space between the groom and the commissioner who's ever marrying them? It would be nice to have a little bit of space there on the other side between the bride's face. So just slight micro adjustments compositionally to balance it out a bit, include that elbow. And I don't know if we need...
I'm going to, just because you just talked about composition, I'm going to add on to that.
Well, I was going to just add one more thing, composition.
Oh, okay.
We're kind of cutting through the top of his head, which is fine. But if we are cutting through the top of his head anyways, I think you could come down, right? Like we could lose more of his head in order to gain more of her elbow. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if we need to, maybe right down to the ear.
Yeah, I'd say the most interesting thing about this photo is the hands and the faces.
Yeah,
expressions.
So how can we make it more about those hands and those faces? You can bend your knees, get lower, and that's going to do a few things. It's going to bring we're going to see the whites of people's eyes, right? Like his expression's great and it translates, but it's going to be even better if we can see the whites of his eyes, which would be, you might be able to see from a further down perspective. Plus it's going to get rid of that guy right in the middle who's not adding anything to the frame. Really,
exactly.
Like cover him up with those hands. Like we
so
don't need.
You go way down.
Oh, way down. Yeah. Then it's just and faces
and foliage.
And then you don't have to worry about the bubble around her shoulder, the commissioner's shoulder, and her nose, and
I'm glad you brought him up because I was waiting to weigh in on him. And you know, with him being such a prominent part of the photo, you know, he's not adding anything to the moment, right? And as such, in my opinion, that's the weak link of this image, is the fact that officiant isn't really adding to it. So having shooting from a lower perspective and maybe having those hands block his face is a brilliant suggestion. I personally wouldn't have even thought about that, but it makes complete sense now that you say that. So really, really cool insight on that, Erica. Well, Mark, as always, thank you so much for submitting. He's been a regular contributor as well. So
it's great image, Mark. I love it.
Yeah,
Mark and I
it is.
That.
Yeah, you Canadians, you.
we used to run together, race together.
Oh, cool. Where?
All over Canada.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so Mark actually lives down the street from me now, and he's second shooting for me in a wedding this weekend. So
nice.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you as always, Mark. We're going to go ahead and move on to this next photo. This one was shot Tibbles by Scott Tibbles. And looks like this was a pretty complicated setup, actually. So I'm going to walk you guys through it. This was a 5-light setup. It was captured with two 200-watt strobes with magenta gels in the car entrance canopy to light up the arches inside. Two Geekoto GT200s behind the couple. One is a backlight and one with a blue gel to illuminate the columns. And then the main light was on a boom and with a 300-watt strobe and a softbox. He had a few beers before I shot it. So, all right, getting some liquid creativity in there, Scott.
Right on.
Yeah, Lanny always says he shoots best off 2 beers, but his beers are like 10% alcohol. So,
oh, jeez.
Yeah. Wow,
That's
listen.
Crazy.
We've never done a lighting setup ever
Never
like
done
that.
5 lights. No.
That's
and, you know,
insane.
I do want to give kudos because, you know, sometimes the more technical the image, the less life it has to it. And there's the most important thing about this image, and we'll get to some of the other stuff in a bit, is the expression between the couple. And I think that's really good. Like, I love his scrunched up face and I love how she's leaning into him.
Because without that, everything else falls flat. It doesn't matter how many lights and how amazing the gel work is. If they've got a lifeless, a lifeless moment, then it's a lifeless representation of a cool idea.
Yeah.
But in this case, you one way or another, you brought it out, right? They brought it and they gave it to you. So you've got a strong moment too. Yeah. And the lighting works. Do you want to?
Well, you said. Well, okay. So
there's a few things.
Yeah. So compositionally, I don't think anything from their waist down adds anything to this photo, or from their hips down. I'm going to say, because you got
even just do this.
Yeah. It simplifies the frame, getting rid of the car garage that's on the bottom of the frame, and it prevents their feet from also being amputated, because right now you can't see their feet. It's like their legs just end.
Just because of the ground.
Just because of the ground. So I would lean into that.
And then you don't have to worry about the skin tones on her legs, right?
Yeah.
Which aren't working right now.
A little muddled.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. So I would crop up from the bottom up until like the hips.
And then, and then if you did have a second or a third or a fourth shot at this, right, and they had, multiple champagne bottles, I'd be looking at this and saying, damn, I'm cutting through his head with that window, right? Can I get them more centered? Can I raise my camera up slightly so that their heads are bubbles around their heads, right? Right in that nice open blue canvas below the windows would be a lot less distracting.
Yeah.
And then the only other constructive thing I'd say is I feel like the edit, some of the post-processing on this one is a little overcooked. Not so much on the building. I mean, the building's great. You went through the work of gelling it, vibrant colors, bring that out. And, I like what you've done to bring out the backlit spray. It's mainly just on them. And I think what happens is by pushing things so much in post to bring out the color and the clarity and the spray, unless we're very careful to locally stay off of their skin ends up looking overcooked. So I'd say their skin and their clothing is just needs to be toned down a little bit on the clarity and the vibrance and everything else that's just pushed to 11.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I concur, Lanny. I actually, I would agree with that. Kind of little bit of highlight recovery, but not too much. Just soften that skin, that you can even use the predetermined brushes in Lightroom, or you can, download some actions, like Florabella or Voto or something like that to help really tone those down. So
the AI masking tools in Lightroom alone, right, allows you to select the subject or the background, but it would do a pretty good job with this one. In which case you can push the background and then
he's blaming Manhattan.
Manhattan is especially if
Manhattan's not great on skin.
And if you turn up the 2-man punch, it's gonna punch it through the roof. Well, you got to use those brushes or those AI masking to just throttle it back on.
Yeah,
on the
Manhattan's often not. The Manhattan's great for those little people, big landscape. It's not great when there's a lot of skin in the photo. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Well, awesome. Thank you, Scott, for submitting that. Really appreciate that. We're gonna go ahead and move on. We're about halfway through. We're gonna go ahead and move on to this next photo. This one comes from Adrienne Como, and this photo was or a little bit of info on this. I am a solo shooter, so I arranged to be behind the couple for the kiss. I usually always take it from the aisle, but I think I love this angle better.
Mm-hmm.
And it is very yeah. Yeah.
If you have the permission and bravery to go there, it's almost always a better perspective for this moment. The first kiss type moment.
And Adrian's
100%.
in our course. Adrian's in our course.
Yeah. So kudos for being brave and getting back there, because whatever's behind them is, if you're shooting the other direction, is almost certainly not as interesting as all of their friends and family's reactions. So
right. Yeah.
So when I'm shooting back there, or Lanny Lanny has the benefit of being 6'4", so and I don't. So I often have the camera way up here because I'm trying to get bubbles around their heads. So their heads right now, although listen, the moment's strong enough to take you through this photo. So I'm just being nitpicky here, but ideally we want their heads in that aisle, right? Not with intersecting with the whatever that scaffolding is in the back. And then we get to see the audience members on both sides too. So
trying for symmetry as best you can, right? Trying to square up so that they're in the middle as much as possible. Yeah, I think you could cross even as is. Standing where you are with this wide lens, you're not quite filling the focal length is too wide for where you're standing. So you either need to be closer to them or crop in on it, because I don't think you need all that sky, and I don't think you need all that ground. This is about them, their moments, and their people behind them. So
and I mean, if you can get that camera higher, you probably couldn't. I've met you, Adrian. You're probably about the same height as me. Like getting that camera higher would improve this photo.
Yeah, and then maybe potentially just taking one step to your right, so they're a little bit more centered within the aisle. And besides that, though, with the image as it sits, maybe a good recommendation would just be to crop it in from the top left down, bring it down a little bit. It's gonna help because it's in this weird kind of middle ground area where it's a little centered, but it's not quite. So just really cropping that in is going to bring a little bit more attention to the main subject and help get rid of some of that negative space, especially that sky. So, but yeah, it is. That was a good call, Adrian. That was a really nice perspective, and it's one of those photos that the more you look at it, the more things you start to notice, right? You see people interacting and giving their reactions to them, embracing in this moment. If you look to the left, you see a dad kind of consoling his daughter, maybe showing her some love. You see this woman who looks just clearly very bored. Maybe she doesn't like the bride, who knows? But very, very good choice to capture it from this moment and deliver something a little bit different. So kudos to you. Thank you so much for submitting this. Okay, moving on. This next photo is from Steve Eaton. And Steve, basically, this was a photo of the bride getting ready and the mom, sister, and bridesmaids all in the same shot.
Great. Yeah, great seeing, thinking, layering. Some micro adjustments and waiting, hoping to get lucky here could bring it to the next level. So just compositionally, I would try to move left slightly to just create a little bit of breathing space between the bride's forehead and that arm in the background. So we want separation, right, as much as possible. So just left a little bit. And then just imagine if the makeup brush was coming in on the bride here. Just that one missing ingredient could bring this to the next level. So waiting, hoping, and shooting through when that brush comes in to complete the story there.
Yeah, you've got a really complex composition here, right? There's a lot going on. These are the kind of places where, I will go back to several hundred times on wedding day if the bride is sitting there and I see this,
right?
And I probably make 400 or 500 shots of this in order to try and get that one where it all lines up. This is where you have to sit and be patient and you've got 3 different zones. So I'll literally divide the frame into 3 zones. I've got the foreground, I've got the midground, and then I've got the background. So some other things I might try and do here is, we don't, the layer on the left of the bridesmaid's back isn't adding anything. If she were turning around, reacting to the bride, yes, included.
Other than that, I do like that hand, just the position of that hand leaning on the couch.
It's not enough.
Yeah.
And I just feel like you probably didn't stay here long enough. Like literally just stay here, wait. Because if it doesn't line up, which is a very big possibility, at least you've put the work in to try and make it work. But it's not going to line up with 2 or 3 shots or even like 10 or 20 shots. This is the kind of thing that's going to line up with patience and commitment and
tenacity. Because when that makeup brush does come in, the other girl doesn't have her hand up, right? It's like it's a lot of patience and tenacity.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, and it's one of those, it's kind of one of those internal dilemmas we have as a wedding photographer, is having that conflict within ourselves. We're like, well, is this the most important moment? Is this the most important moment that's happening in a room, or are there potentially other moments, right? So, as a photographer, we have to kind of pick and choose, and sometimes it can be a little challenging to know if this is the right call, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah,
totally. And what Erica mentioned there is that, because often we think, we just have to sit and commit and wait, and I got to stay here for 20 minutes. That's not always the case. Like those, often they're in the same seat, getting the hair and makeup done for, 30, 45 minutes, an hour maybe. And so you can go off and get moments and this and that and the other thing, and just keep that composition in the back of your mind when things line up.
Okay, I'll literally keep a camera there, like waiting with the and what I had meant to say in my mind is that if it doesn't line up, it doesn't matter. Like no one's going to be like, where's that photo they took while they were sitting by the window for 20 minutes? If it doesn't line up, it doesn't matter. No one's sweats off no one's going to care. No one's going to think it's a missing shot. And this is one of the reasons to show up early, because if you're only doing, let's say 20 minutes of bride prep, you don't have time to commit to a shot like this. You got to, you're checking off your mental list of things, right? So one of the biggest, most important things you can do on a wedding day is give yourself time to be creative. That's it. It goes back to that first question you asked, Sean, right? Being creative takes time. Like it doesn't, you can't expect yourself to instantly show up into a room and be able to nail something like that. That takes a lot of time. So give yourself that chance by giving yourself that time.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for submitting this photo, Steve. It was really nice discussion. We're officially halfway through our live image critique. So real quickly, I just want to do some halftime announcements. So for starters, if you are not already in Erica and Erica and Lanny's Facebook group, 2Man U, make sure you guys join it. They are absolutely incredible educators. If you haven't already learned that by now, they have a lot of really great things to say, and they have an amazing education platform. Make sure you stick around till the end. We are going to be announcing a winner for the Pro Prince Canvas. And then finally, it was sold out, but 2 people just dropped out due to family stuff. I have 2 spots left in my upcoming environmental portrait photography workshop here on October 11th in Colorado. If you're interested in signing up, please do that. And finally, if you're not already a member of my Facebook group, the Portrait Photographer's Resource, it's free to join. Anyone can join. We do these critiques every month. Awesome. That was a mouthful. Moving on. All right. So
let's jump in there and apologize to Scott, who says that we've ruined his image. Scott, you're going to make it better next time. You can't unsee it, right? You're going to redo the skin tones. It's going to be that much better.
Oh, totally.
And the next time you do your 5 light setup, right? It'll be that much better.
5 lights, dude. Kudos to you, man. That's insane.
Yeah,
5
seriously.
lights.
I have never done anything more than 2, I don't think.
That's impressive.
Awesome. All right. Well, hey, moving on. This next photo comes from Becky McNerdy. She did not attach any information on this image, so we are going to just take it at face value here.
Okay.
Well.
Okay, so this is listen, technically, Becky, you pulled this off. Like,
Absolutely.
like I
Yeah.
any photographer that can pull off something like this technically,
The thrown shadow, or whatever it is, the thrown shadow, and
and the
the
hard
lighting,
light.
the light on her. I mean, that's just congratulations on that. It's beautiful short light on her.
Yeah.
Amazing.
What this photo is missing for me is a feeling, really. Like this, that what this photo does is show me the photographer's interest in light, and shows me that the photographer really committed to a photo technique. But it doesn't tell me anything about the couple. And often, and these photos are necessary, right? They're necessary to hone our skills. So I want to say that. So, like, I don't think you should not have taken this by all means. This is a great start. But how do we insert some life into this? Because I feel like in our world, we call them lifeless representations of ideas. So we've got this great idea, we've got this great light, but it's lifeless.
It's very well executed.
Yeah.
It's absolutely well executed, well lit, and well posed as well, right? You've given shape to her body.
So
nice triangles.
So perhaps
triangles.
Triangles. So if this was perhaps the first photo I took, okay, how can I get some life in that shadow? Maybe he's throwing his, this is just, I'm spitballing ideas. I'm not saying you should do this, but maybe he's throwing his head back in laughter and
chugging a beer.
Or maybe he's chugging a beer and she's chugging a beer. And so that his shadow silhouette matches the profile of her, like just taking it to the next step, because you've got the technical down, you've got the idea down. Now we got to insert some life.
Yeah, you've got the technical expertise to pull this kind of thing off. That's great. And so the next level is, okay, there's something special to give it that wow.
And because honestly, very, very many people are doing this these days, right? So it has to have that something extra, that something unexpected that we've already talked about to take it to the next level. So again, I will say you pulled this off here, which means that you could probably pull this off in a scenario like a speech as well, right? The right speech at the right time. You know how to do this. So maybe you're projecting the shadow of the speaker and her reaction to the speaker, right? So, and because you've done that here, you can do that there now in a scenario where it makes more sense.
And that's the stepping stone of learning these kind of techniques that take a lot of thought and being able to problem solve and dial in your settings. And it starts with portraits, right? It starts in control settings where we have control. And then it's like running drills. We get more and more competent with it to the point where we can recognize real life scenarios where, I can actually execute that technique in this real scenario and catch a real moment.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly don't have too much more to add, because I find this incredibly interesting, and I've seen these type of photos done before, but technically it's a struggle. It's challenging. I've never attempted it myself, but there is a lot of technical ability that goes into this. So I'm gonna leave it to what you guys said. But Becky, wow, what a stupid awesome image. So thank you so much for sharing. Just find out that way to take it to the next level, like Erica and Lanny said. So. Moving on, we're gonna go ahead and showcase Ed's photo. This is from Ed Ailman. This was a one light setup, street photography, captured with a Sony A7 R2, 24-inch softbox with a 200-watt strobe, camera right. I'm gonna assume he meant camera left, because camera right's a wall. And this was his first foray into street photography.
Well, yeah, this is in some ways, I mean, photography is photography, light is light, composition is composition, moments are moments. But in some ways, I don't feel like I'm well suited to critique. It's sort of like a death metal artist trying to critique a country music song. It's so far removed from the stuff we're used to doing,
Yeah, I would say probably, listen, she looks great. You've got a great model. That is pulling you through this photo. And your light is pulling you through this photo. Replace that with not such an amazing model, right? Like, it's really good, but the composition is very expected. Okay. She's kind of, her pose is good, but like she's gifting you a whole bunch here. Like she is gorgeous. She looks great. The moment's good. But what can you do that's a little bit more interesting compositionally? Like you say, this is street photography, but I don't see anything that represents a street.
Could
here
be
for
studio.
Me. It could be studio. So you've got these great leading lines on the wall, right, with those bricks. So maybe this is your first shot, and then your second shot's, okay, how can I include more context? And maybe you back up and you fill the frame with those leading lines of those bricks that go right to her.
Yeah, you pan right and fill the frame with bricks and leading lines, and or you pan left and you fill the frame with that dark negative space, right? She's like in the highlight on the shadows.
Yeah.
Right.
And you start eliminating yourself away from the things that aren't interesting, aren't adding to the image. I don't feel like the floor or the ground, the sidewalk is adding, right? Like the lit up side. It's just gray and boring.
Yeah.
So
Bring those highlights down.
Composition that features less of that and more of the things that I do find interesting.
Yeah, Ed, I to add to what you two said, I think you have a little bit of a missed opportunity here, and I think one way that you could almost really convey this more as a street image is by changing some stuff with your lighting. So when I this is me just personally, but when I think of like a street image, right, like something captured on the street, a portrait of someone at night, where is your light going to naturally be coming from? And that's generally going to be from like street lights, right? So almost, I would challenge you, Ed, next time you find yourself in a situation like this, maybe try a photo where you have your light really, really high up on a light stand, having an assistant hold it or something, and have it coming down on the model. So it's almost like portraying the light coming from a street light. And that's also going to help you, potentially get some light off of that wall, so the wall isn't as distracting and you're not having as many highlights on it. And if you were to modify it with a grid, so like if you used a softbox with a grid on it, or even like a magsphere with a grid magsphere on it, you could really help direct the direction of that light, control the direction of that light, so you're not spilling everywhere, and it's going to mimic that street light almost type of effect. So but yeah, nothing I can really comment on as far as the model. Like you two said, looks like a great model. The pose.
I would say take advantage of the fact that you're on the street.
Yeah.
Right? Because unless you had told me it was taken on the street, I wouldn't have known that. And I feel like it's a creative playground, right? Like, yeah. So use it. Use it.
Absolutely. Good job, Ed. Thank you so much for submitting. We're going to go ahead and move on to this next photo from Randall Mena. This was just looks like a single light, 200-watt strobe with a umbrella. And, one thing that Randall is really, really excels at, and actually last month, his submission was Jerry's favorite photo out of everyone. And one thing, Randall is really excels at is just his toning and his shadow detail. And I think Randall, you've done a very good job as always here. But I know this is a little out of your realm of the type of images you guys capture, but I'm curious to see, I'm just curious to see the two-man perspective on this studio portrait.
Well, I think Randall actually did a really good job of capturing a subtle moment here. Like, even though it's not a loud, rambunctious, or there's a subtlety to the way she's connecting with the camera that there is a little bit of a moment there and a little curl to the side of her lip.
And it's also the catchlight in her eyes.
The lighting's
drawing
amazing.
us into her eyes.
It looks like a Renaissance painting for sure.
Eyes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like it's very, very well executed. I've done this very well. I wouldn't even know how to.
No, I wouldn't know.
Honestly.
Well, I'm zooming in.
And this isn't a critique. This would be more of a personal interest thing. Like if there was something a little bit more unexpected, like this is perfect. Like everything about it's perfect. Her eyes are perfect. Her clothing's perfect. The pleats in her dress are perfect. There's like not a hair out of place. But it's a kid, right? So I feel like there could be
an opportunity for one thing to be imperfect,
no,
and it would
not
almost be like
necessarily, but like in a juxtaposition or something that could be. But it's
maybe the
amazing. I
crown
mean,
is a little crooked, or
yeah, maybe the crown's a little crooked or
Yeah.
something to say that she's 6 years old. But I mean, that's not the point. The point of this image was to create something like this, and I think they did a really good job.
It's hard to critique an image that, I mean, quite frankly, is almost perfect, you know, in so many ways. In so many ways.
And I would say that's probably
say maybe it's too perfect.
Yeah, but it's
yeah.
not. It's just I want something a little unexpected, like a smear of chocolate on her lip. Like imagine this if she had just eaten an ice cream cone. Like I feel like that would. Like that would bring some life to this, like because it would be like this prim and proper girl, but she's still just a kid, and she's got ice cream.
That's something that stops a viewer in their tracks. Right?
That's that out of the box creative thinking that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
You know, it's seeing the world in a different light, in a different way. So
kids don't want to be perfect. Their parents
exactly,
want
and you can still do the perfect one, right? But then it's like, okay, let's do something like that's out there, and you know that's something special. I can't zoom in to see like what's happening at the pixel level, but this resolution, those hands look really perfect. Like I don't know if the skin smoothing's been pushed a lot, or she's really
it's nice
smooth skin. And that's
I see one imperfection when I zoom in. I see one stray hair on her chest.
And that's kind of a personal aesthetic taste thing as well. But for my eyes, I find I notice the skin smoothing a little bit. And of course, I spend hundreds of hours toning images, so I would notice that thing more than a Joe Public's going to notice.
They're like repeating. That looks maybe cloned there. I can't zoom in either. Oh, wait, can we?
It's hard to tell.
Well,
there's
at this point,
it's perfect.
There's a little something fishy with the collar on the right side, but it's
okay.
But that's me being like extra picky.
We're trying to find something wrong. Why can't we find anything wrong?
And it's too perfect.
And that's what I would say. That would be my critique, is I want to see a little bit of kid in there as well.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but it's
awesome.
But I don't think that was his point, and that's his art, right? Like, so I don't feel comfortable saying, "Oh, you should make her have a dirty face." I'm just
an idea, like an outside the box suggestion.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, Randall, as much as we would love to keep tearing apart untearable apart image, we're gonna go ahead and move on. We're almost through, everyone. We got this next photo from Ellie B. Chico. And this another fellow Magmon ambassador, and this image is part of a post-apocalyptic series that she started 4 years ago that has been going on for a book I will eventually publish. For lighting, I used a 400-watt strobe with a XL Magsphere on a cheetah stand. So here we go. It almost kind of gives me like Mad Max vibes too, a little bit.
Oh yeah, totally.
Oh, totally. And the toning fits that vibe. It's definitely they understood the assignment.
Yes, for sure.
I mean, one of the things I'm inclined to think, if I put myself here in this environment, is what changes might I make? I'm just inclined to do this. For whatever reason, maybe it's a taste thing, I'm trying to exclude those rocks that she's standing on. And this comes kind of back to can you zoom out so I can see the whole thing? Do I want the landscape, the sky, the sunset, the subject, and the rocks they're standing on? Or maybe I can have an even stronger, faster read if it's just the subject and one or two of those environmental elements. That might just be kind of a stylistic thing, but I'd be trying to exclude the rocks they're standing on and just have them just on the sky with the sunset, just as an idea. I mean, the lighting is,
Yeah. I'd love to see the other pictures in the series, because what I really want to look in this photo at is her clothes and her glasses and her makeup and her braids. And like, I want it up close to that. So I'm assuming that's in the series too. because I feel like that's really
That's
interesting.
really what it's.
That's what's so interesting, and I feel like this is a good complementary photo to that if you have both.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to see the expression up because that's what's interesting to me here is
Right.
her. Yeah.
Maybe we try to bring in that sun right in behind. Obviously, there's a light source on them, so maybe the light just just blowing out behind them would be interesting too.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to add to your critiques, there's probably two small things, actually two and a half small things that might improve this image. So one, kind of mirroring your rock comment, your foreground comment, Lanny, bringing down the highlights on those rocks, especially at the very bottom of the frame, might bring your attention right back to the subject, because one of the things that our eye is automatically drawn to is the brightest part in the scene, right? And not necessarily saying that those rocks are the brightest parts of the scene, but those highlights do draw some attention to them, so I'd maybe tone down that a little bit. The other thing is I would try to remove the catch light in this person's eyeglasses. It's just in a really awkward spot, and it doesn't it just takes away a little bit from the image. And then finally, going back to the composition, I would almost like to see the model turned in towards the frame as opposed to out of the frame, because naturally when you're looking at a subject, you want to follow the direction that they're looking. Oh, is there something over there? Is it where is her or his eye leading to? I'm really curious in what's added, what the rest of the story, right? And when you're looking outside of the frame, it takes you away from the right side of the frame, which is also just as important in my opinion. You have the beautiful sun, you have the mountains, so those are just my small critiques there, to help improve
I totally agree.
A little bit. Yeah, those are good points.
Yeah, and you could clone out the catch light in the one lens or duplicate it in the other lens.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yep, absolutely. So cool.
Yeah, that's true. You could.
Yeah, not to brag, but the Manns just agreed with me on something. So, but Ellie, thank you so much for submitting that really, really cool photo. I'll admit this is probably one of my favorite photos I've seen from you. So thank you so much for sharing this. It was really neat.
Yeah, I want to see more, Ellie.
Definitely. Yeah, post them in the group, Ellie. Once you have some more, I'd love to see that. Okay, moving on. This one comes from Locke Lee, and I don't think he attached. Nope, no information on this photo. Just looks like a portrait. Okay. I'm gonna point something out right away, and it's not even a photography thing. It's a styling thing. On a suit jacket, how many times do we leave the bottom button buttoned? The answer is never. So styling thing, and I only point that out because there are wedding coordinators out there. Like if you're getting a lot of business from wedding coordinators, they will roast you for stupid little things like that, because they want they want their clients to look the best, and so that's generally speaking a fashion sense.
I didn't know that was the rule. So
it
bottom
is.
button always undone?
Yes. Mm-hmm. It's something that's so dumb that I don't know who invented, but it's a thing. It's a thing.
Good to know. Well, I'll just piggyback off that. So we're going to unbutton the bottom button, and we're going to get him to do something with that left hand other than putting it in his pocket. Something that suggests he's into this girl who seems to be into him. Yeah, it's rare that the hands in the pocket conveys the kind of emotion we're going for. So.
I think this is a classic example of sky or ground.
Yeah.
Even though there's no sky in this photo, but
what's above them or what's below
what's
them?
Above them is so much more interesting, than that ground. And I mean, she's got a nice leg.
But you can still include the leg. You just bend your knees and get the camera down lower.
Yeah, get the camera down.
And you can bring them up entirely into that area of foliage.
And then you got all those triangles working for you, and then you don't have the highlights of the ground competing, and you got all that green foliage, and you got those repeating patterns. I think the ground, when you look at the photo real estate, the ground is at least 30% of that frame. So it's got to be interesting. It's got to have shadows. It's got to have something of interest, and it doesn't. It just doesn't.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
also don't love the. I mean,
But I do love the triangles up top.
it's like the
Yeah.
triangle, but I
Yes,
don't love
yes.
the white tent,
I
whatever
don't mind
tarp.
that.
It's
It kind of frames them.
it does frame them. I mean, I guess I would want it to be colorful or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and your point on the angle, potentially capturing this from a lower angle, is a great point, because you do have that, that little bit of that negative space between the top of the tent and the top of their heads, and you just have a lot of those elements competing with each other. So,
Mhm.
but yeah,
Mhm.
for me, I think that it's the pose. It needs to be it needs to be reworked just a little bit to create some sort of more engagement with each other. And I one thing I will say, Locke, in your defense, that goes a little bit on, it's a little bit on theme with their pose and their expression, is the fact that they are wearing all black, right? It kind of conveys more of like a, just that more moody perspective, maybe a little bit more of like a dramatic or a hard point of view. If they were in a tradition, if she was in a traditional white dress, and he was in his traditional suit or tux, definitely the pose definitely would not work. So I will give you that, but maybe just
Mhm.
something to establish a little bit more of a connection. And they could still look, they could still have this like emo vibe going on, but something that can still establish a little bit more of a connection through body language will do you wonders. But
Yeah.
anything else to add before we move on, guys?
No, I don't think so.
It's great light on them.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is, for sure. All right, so this next photo comes from Chuck. I can never say his name right. Chuck Savadalis. And one thing, I know this is your first time jumping on board with these image critiques, but I love seeing Chuck's images, because Chuck, it always submits photos that he captured on film back in the 80s and the 90s, right? And this was a photo that he captured of some Trekkies in San Jose in 1987. This was photographed in their home for the Metro newspaper cover story, captured with an Olympus OM4T, a 24 millimeters on Kodak Tri-X 400 film, lit with a single Dynalite studio strobe and a large softbox camera left. And he even included the pronunciation of his last name. The pronunciation of his last name, all vowels or short with the emphasis on del. Okay, so Savadelis. Okay.
Sorry, Dallas.
Savadelis. Okay, cool.
Maybe.
Savadelis. I don't know.
Okay,
But anyway,
I
yeah.
love everything about this photo. Like, this is just like, I would show this in a workshop as like a good environmental portrait. Like, it's so good. I love like the light, but like, I have nothing bad to say about this photo, because it
Yeah.
tells me what these people are like. I love their expressions. I love that they're not overly emotive. And they're surrounded by all this crap, Star Trek crap, with the 1980s dining room lamp, and like, it's so good.
Yeah, I'm inclined to try cropping it. I don't know if I would like it. The reason I'm inclined to try is I like the clutteredness behind them. I'm tempted to want to try to fill the frame with that and see if it would be
Yeah, but then
stronger.
you'd miss that.
But then I would
framed
lose
image.
some of the obviously some of the framed images and whatnot, and the kind of feel that they're in this tiny little room.
Yeah, no, it's
which
so good.
is
Well, and one of the challenges though is that he is so much taller than her, right? And you have to have that breathing room to
totally.
physically just get him in the frame,
Yeah.
No, I only go as far as the top of his hat and the bottom of her hands.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would guess that I would.
I don't
would
think.
edit-
I think
edit
we'd end
undo.
up. Yeah, we'd edit undo.
Yeah.
No, it's so good. It's
Can I
it's
just-
like a really good environmental portrait.
Yeah, I can I just point out that the one thing that's really amusing me in this image is just you have all this Star Trek stuff in the room, and then you just have one houseplant on the right.
Yeah,
frame.
yeah, I love that. And then you got like taxidermy on the left wall in the back,
No, it's
and the
fantastic.
curtains. Like, it's
Oh,
just
I didn't even
fantastic.
notice that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can sit and study this image, for quite a while. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, such a like I said, he always submits these really interesting editorial style stories. So
Yeah.
Film in the 80s, hey?
1987.
Very cool.
Did you say?
he said 19 what did he say, 1987? Yep, in San Jose.
And I love that he gave them something to hold in their hands too. Like just that's just a good learning experience for everyone. Is that they're
Something to do with their hands.
yeah, they don't have to. They're holding something. It's like, but they're holding it in a way that makes sense too. It's just so good.
Yeah. Right. And I think that is one of the biggest challenges with any sort of portrait photography is hands, right? Because hands convey a lot of emotion. Hands add to the story, whether you're posing with your bride or whether, you are, I don't know, baking a cake, whatever the case may be, your hands tell the story. And as you mentioned, having them do something with their hands that is keeping their hands busy, but is also adding to the story is a really good approach. So
yeah.
And there's just something about their expression too that nails it.
Yes.
This, like just smirky little grin, not a big beaming smile, but
they're like, we're nerds and we know
nerds and we know it. This is us, and we're proud. And I love it.
I want to see a follow-up story done on these guys if they're still alive.
I was just thinking the same thing. I was like, I wonder if these guys are still alive.
Chuck, there's your next mission for next month's image critiques. Find them, capture another photo, and report back.
It's such a cool photo.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much for submitting this, buddy. Appreciate it. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on. We got down to our last few images here. This was from Andrew Elder, and he shot this in his small studio with his new Canon R5 Mark II, and he used 3 lights, 400-watt strobe, in a 36-inch softbox, another 300-watt strobe with a 48-inch strip box for his edge light, and then a 100-watt box mag dome to add a bit of light and gradient to my gray Savage paper backdrop. That was a good call. And then a Westcott eyelighter in front of the subject to lift the shadows. He only had about 12 feet of total depth to work with and a 9-foot ceiling with little side to side, which is why I use a more open aperture than I might otherwise. So,
well, I love the wide open aperture. Like I love the super shallow depth of focus there. It's like even just look across his head, the top of his head is out of focus. His ears are out of focus compared to the eyes. So I actually like that.
It is nice, and it creates that nice soft transition of the light on the background too.
Yeah, I mean, this is hard to critique because I feel like it's immaculately done.
I could comment a little bit on the pose, but
go for it.
This is like I don't think I've done a headshot in my life.
Save me.
Yeah, no, you're good. So, what I would actually do, I would flip this image, do a complete flip flop, right? So same image, you don't change anything, and you're flipping it so he's looking kind of like what I said back on Ellie's photo. He's looking into the frame. He's looking into that a little bit more into like, that negative space almost. And I'm just curious to see how that would do. But, it might help the perspective a little bit. It might not. You'd have to play around with it. But I honestly think doing that because as generally speaking, most of us, we read from left to right. Correct. So by having that negative space flip-flopped, you start with that negative space and it leads you into the subject, leads you into the frame. So doing that might help it read better. I'm not sure. I don't know, but something I would try. The other thing too that I'm seeing that might help a little bit is with the pose, and he's kind of got this neck forward thing going on here, right? So he almost looks like he's like a bobblehead, like he's bringing his neck forward. And I don't know if that was intentional or not, but to me, it's almost like he's falling down a little bit, right? He's just kind of like is getting neck heavy. So I would just have him bring his head back a little bit, make it so he's rolling those shoulders back. You're closing up the gap between the back of his shirt collar and his suit collar, so there's not that emptiness right there. Everything's a little bit tighter, and he's just a little bit straighter, and it's a little bit more of a power pose, so to speak. With that said, The lighting is phenomenal. The expression is phenomenal. I love his expression. It reads very well. Just a couple of those small changes, and I think you would have an absolutely incredible headshot.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm noticing right now that now I can't unsee is the ear on the left side,
Yes.
Hit right here.
his right ear.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like if the head was, I don't know, do you think that should be out? Like it feels weird coming out of his cheek there.
Maybe having him just bring his chin slightly more towards the camera would
Like a
help with
little,
that.
yeah,
Just a little micro turn, and you can, when you're directing your clients, everyone, what you can do is just mimic what you want them to do, right? So one thing I'll do is I'll actually point to my chin. I'll say, hey, move it this much. Oh, okay. And then that helps them.
yeah.
Yeah, the toning on that is great as well. And the skin
Mm-hmm.
tones are spot on. The one thing I might suggest is burning his left shoulder, the suit on his left shoulder slightly. I think it might be pulling my eye a bit, but that's about it.
Yeah. Hey, Andrew agrees. Neck heavy nails it. You're welcome, Andrew. I appreciate you.
Yeah, once you
saying that.
say it, it's yeah.
Yeah. So, cool. Well, that was a great photo for discussion. Thank you so much, Andrew. Your first time submitting to this image critique, so I hope you you got some value out of this, and you learned something. Okay, 2 more photos. This next second to last photo comes from Melissa Paperntick, also a first time submitter. And Melissa used a three flash setup for this. 2 flashes against the background with Magmod color gels, and the third flash you can see my assistant holding with a Magmod Maggrid Magsphere combo. I don't see the assistant holding it. So it's probably she actually included a behind the scenes photo. I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So okay, here's the photo. What do you guys think?
Okay, great first shot because especially these first shots, right? We're just working out the technicalities. You got the lighting.
Yeah, and when Erica says first shot, she doesn't literally mean like the first shot. Like you've done all the things, you've figured out the technique, the technical aspects and the lighting, and you've got your composition kind of figured out. You got your lighting dialed in. Okay, now that's the first shot.
Yeah,
now we start climbing.
Yeah, it's almost like climbing a ladder. Okay, this is the first shot. What problems do we have to solve? Okay, so the first problem I would say we have to solve here is they both look a little bit awkward, right? Like he looks like his suit is like stretched and it's about to rip around his back. And then their shoulders look especially large. And that's because that's the closest thing to your lens, right? So, and you're shooting from a low angle. So literally the closest thing to their lens is their hips and their shoulders. And so that's not working for you for your advantage in this photo. So if they're standing like that, if you're sort of committed to that pose, so first of all, okay, maybe have him relax.
I'm gonna pull you up. I'm gonna pull you up bigger
Maybe
here. There you go.
his arm a little bit. So that'd be the first thing. Okay, shake it out, get it relaxed, put it on her, squeeze her butt. I don't know, just something with that. And then instead of having them sort of stand there like this with you down there, and this being the closest thing to your camera, have them sort of lean over, right? Mm-hmm. And if they lean over, then suddenly the closest thing to the camera becomes their heads, which is what you want in this photo.
The perspective.
Yeah.
I actually use that technique all the time, Erica. So it's nice to hear you say that because it's some validation that what I'm doing is correct. But I actually do that a lot when I'm shooting ultra wide and doing like an upwards perspective. So great advice. Great advice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I might be trying to solve a lighting issues as well. I mean, stylistically, artistically, the lighting in the background is interesting and it's colorful and it's vibrant. It's artistic choice. So that could work, but in combination with the lighting on the subject, I don't think it's working great because the lighting on their skin is lit very similar to the barn door behind them in both brightness and color and tone. So I might consider, and the reason for that is because it's kind of the light source on your subjects is pretty much coming um,
Camera.
from camera, kind of straight on ish.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple things you could try. Well, one is just silhouette, and often we'll start with that, right? Because okay, we've got the lighting on the backdrop. Let's see what a
Right.
silhouette looks like. Can we work an interesting silhouette? But if like, we are going to add a light on them, fill light on them, might try. If I don't love this, I can try something different. So maybe I'm just going to try the light source behind them,
Exactly.
backlighting. So aiming the light towards the camera, hidden behind them, and create that rim lit effect, right? So we could try silhouette, could try rim light. And then if we really want to try fill light of some sort, I would be inclined to try to bring that light source away from my camera,
Mm-hmm.
off to the side. Now it's not going to work with this pose, of course, because you're going to light the back of one of their heads. So you're going to have to adapt the pose as well. Maybe bring them around into like a backward spoon position, so they're both kind of facing this towards the light ish. So lighting wise, I'd be trying those other options. I don't know what I'm going to like or love better than this. But I would be trying those ones because I'm not loving this because their skin, they just don't pop against the background. Their skin kind of matches the toning behind them.
Yeah.
I think it could work if it was a stronger moment, like if we could see like if their expressions were really interesting. But
Mm-hmm.
The kiss is hard.
It's so hard to take a flattering picture of a kiss, especially from this angle. Like if it's
Yeah.
really, really up close, but even when up close, it's kind of gross looking because you got these lips pressed together. So I feel like an almost kiss is better than a
I
kiss.
was just about to say that. Yep.
Yeah. And sometimes when we tell our clients that, like almost kiss, but not quite, they do this lip puckering thing. So I just tell them to smile and try and touch each other's teeth to each other. And
Yep.
that's tends to get something a little bit. Yeah. The kiss is really hard.
It is for sure. And I think it's almost like a default too, right? Like as photographers, our default way of showing or having our clients show emotion is just by kissing each other. I mean, because what's an easier way to show emotion? By kissing. So you kind of have to think a little bit outside the box and think of other ways. Okay, how do I express this emotion without going to the obvious? So like you said, this is a great first shot. Okay, we got it. Cool. Now what can we do to elevate it when it comes to posing, lighting, moment, etc.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
And again,
Awesome.
if you do this again, everything from below that line through their hips is less interesting than everything above it.
Yeah, crop it out. Crop it out
Yeah.
for sure. Mm-hmm. So awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much for submitting that. That was a really good photo for discussion. And this is our final image. And what a banger to end on. This comes from Abello, or is it Abello or Bayo? Abello Guillame. And this was captured facing the sun behind a fountain.
Oh,
Very
okay.
interesting perspective. Very interesting. Yeah. I had to.
On a dark back. Yeah.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. So well done. Good seeing and thinking to try this.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's well done. The first thing I would be, if I notice this, trying to improve is I just want a little bit of light between their kiss, between their noses, their lips.
Well, it's the almost kiss thing we talked
Yeah,
about.
just
like
in
we
the photos.
talked about. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. We don't know where his face ends and her face begins. So just trying to get that almost tiny bit of separation in there. Editing wise, I feel like there's a couple highlights that you could burn down a little bit just to make it a faster read straight into them. So if you look at the bottom right corner, that's a really hot spot. It's kind of pulling my eye a bit on her chest and the back of his shoulder. So those three hot spots I probably burned down a little bit.
Yeah, and I think actually it's all about their faces backlit. So I would be, one of the things I'd be trying to problem solve is how do I get less of his back backlit? Because that doesn't, unless she has a hand back there, or unless there's something that's other than a back that displays some emotion or connection between them, I would try and eliminate that. Just make it about their faces backlit, separation, like Lanny said, so that there's a nice rim light, and then the foreground moisture.
And you know what? It looks like it's her left arm is, I guess it's just kind of on his chest, but I see the rim light behind her arm.
I think it's actually on his neck. If you look right at the base of his head, right where it meets his neck, you can see a little bit of a bump there, and I think that's where her hand is.
Oh, okay.
Oh, right there.
Because that's a potential idea to solve that hot spot on his back. Is that arm could be dangling some fingers, her hand back there.
But I would say the best bet would just be to simplify it down to their faces and the moisture. Get rid of the back.
And another editing tip for the as is, if you've got that bright highlight on the back of his, because sometimes burning it down, it looks muddy, it just gets kind of gray and it looks burned down, is you can also use the pinch tool in Photoshop, in the liquify, the pinch tool to just sort of pinch that rim light narrower.
That's where the hand
that
is.
wide spot. Oh, that's where the hand is.
Hand is in the back of the neck.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right. Well, hey, that was a great discussion, on this photo. Kind of like going back to the very first image, when you're doing a silhouette, you need to be a little bit more aware of your body language and creating those slight separations in negative space. So, it just doesn't all kind of smush together as a blob. And that's something that can be a little bit challenging with silhouettes. And that's where, directing our clients is so important. But hey, thank you so much for submitting that photo, Abello. Really, really cool photo. And one thing I want to point out on kind of a more personal note is the color palette of this almost kind of reminds me of like champagne, the color of champagne. So as like a wedding image, I think it's very successful.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's very eye catchy.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, guys, that officially brings us to the end. Actually, Erica, could you come in a little bit with Lanny? So there you go, so we can see you. But guys, thank you so much for joining us. That was really amazing to have you.
Yeah. Sorry if we went on too long.
Not at all. No, we went an hour and 48 minutes, which is great. I think the past 2 times we went over 2 hours. I think with Ben, we went like 2.5 hours because we just had so much to talk about. So we did it perfect. We hit it right on the head. Before we announce the winner of the randomly selected winner of the Pro Prince Canvas, for those who joined late, can you just give a little quick brief synopsis of where people can find you, where they can learn from you, anything else that you'd like to share with our viewers?
Well, all our education stuff is on our website, so twoman.com, and then our education community, I guess, lives on Facebook, and it's called 2ManU. That's the group. And
we haven't been very active in there lately. We kind of go in spurts. Like we'll be in there for 3 months and then we take a break, and we'll be in there again soon for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear that, guys. And then another quick announcement for those of you who missed it earlier. I still have spots open for my October environmental portrait photography workshop. If you'd like to sign up, it's 1 day. It's going to be in the fall. It's going to be beautiful. We're going to have so much fun. So without further ado, the randomly selected winner is number 17, which is Melissa Paperntick. So great job winning that Pro Prince Canvas. Go ahead and reach out to me. We'll get it sent out. Lanny, Erica, you two were absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for your time. Keep on creating absolutely incredible art. You two are the masters at what you do. So thank you. I really appreciate it, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us. It's fun.
It's always fun.
Of course. And as always, I will end this with some words of wisdom. I want you all to stay classy, stay sassy, and of course, be dope nasty. Thanks, everyone. See you soon.